Hail and well met, adventurers. In today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at tips for new players and how you, as a new player, can learn to be comfortable in the new environment that is Dungeons and Dragons. Before we start, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, so I can continue bringing you even more great video content like this. With all that out of the way, let's jump right into it. The first tip I have for new players of Dungeons and Dragons is don't ask, but say. This is maybe one of the most important things to remember when you're a new player. A lot of new players, rather than saying what they want to do, they get too wrapped up in all the ability scores and the skills that their player character has. So rather than saying, I look around the room to find the clue, they say, I'm going to make an investigation check to find the hidden note. And while that's good that they're able to think that way, it's not the way that you really want to be thinking, because sometimes if you say what you want to do, sometimes the dungeon master won't even ask you to make a check. I've had games where a player has just said that they want to do something, and I don't even bother having them roll. I just have them succeed if it's something that's easy enough or something that they have enough time to do. Another thing is that it adds to being comfortable in role play. And it helps in this because your character doesn't know that they're proficient in perception or investigation. They just know that they want to do something. So by saying, I make an Arcana check on this, you're metagaming, which is something that is, at most tables, pretty much discouraged. My next tip for new players is to speak in character as much as possible. Now, there certainly are times where it doesn't make sense to speak in character. Maybe you're just having an out-of-character discussion about what's going on, or maybe you're just, it's a short scene and you're just describing your character's actions. That's totally fine. And it's also totally fine if you're not super comfortable speaking in character. I know that a lot of new players who are new to role-playing in general, or any form of acting where you're being someone who isn't you, it can maybe be a little bit overwhelming to just jump in and start speaking as someone else. So for some new players, I will say it might be better for some new players to just say, oh, well, my character says X, Y, and Z. But for the most part, you should be trying to get more and more comfortable with speaking as your character and not narrating your character. Because again, it's role-playing. So you need to be playing your role. When you're speaking in character, it adds so much more to the immersion of the game. It makes the dungeon master and the other players at the table, it makes them feel so much more like they're there in the world. It also can help you get inside your character's head, because when you have to speak as someone else, you don't have to think about, this is what I would say. You have to think about, oh, this is what my character would say. And it also can help you get outside of your comfort zone. Because like I said, it's fine for some new players who aren't fully comfortable with getting super into the role play. It's fine if they will maybe just narrate their character's actions. But over time, it's a very good thing to get outside of your comfort zone when it comes to role play. And one of the best ways to get outside of that comfort zone is to start speaking in character more rather than just narrating your character's action. My next tip for new players is don't feel obligated to memorize all of your abilities or spells or any of that sort of thing all at once. I've had a number of new players at the table who feel like they're inferior to the more experienced veteran players for not knowing what each of their abilities does or not knowing what all their spells do. That's not super important when you're a new player. That is something that comes with practice. Some people have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for years, for many different editions, and they just know all of the abilities by heart. They've read the player's handbook or the Dungeon Master's guide so many times that they don't need to ask the Dungeon Master, hey, what does this ability do? Or, oh, how does this magic item work again? But when you're a new player, the Dungeon Master and the other players at the table, we all expect that you're going to be asking those questions. Don't feel like you need to memorize it all right when you start out. Do it incrementally, because I can almost guarantee you that by the end of the campaign, you'll have all of your abilities for that character memorized. My next tip for new players is never feel like you're slowing down the game. A lot of new players, being new, they have a lot of questions to ask, and they're checking with the Dungeon Master, hey, during the combat section, can I do this? Or, hey, other player, how does my action surge ability work again? Or how does color spray work? And a lot of new players will get really apologetic when they ask these sorts of questions. Be like, sorry, I know I'm slowing down the game. Don't feel that way. Everybody has been new at one point. Everybody knows what it's like to not know all of your abilities, to have to ask all of those questions. Nobody thinks you're slowing down the game. And if your Dungeon Master or the other players feel like you are slowing down the game, you might want to rethink, maybe this isn't the group for me. My final tip for new players is something that I think every new player really needs to hear at least once, and that is, don't get discouraged. This ties in to the last two tips, because a lot of new players, they see the veterans having all their spells, every spell in the player's handbook, every magic item in the Dungeon Master's guide. They've got all of that stuff memorized, and they don't even have to look at the book. They just know how much damage Fireball does, and they know how Power Word Stun works. And for new players, it's really easy to see those veteran players who just know all of it and just get really discouraged and say, I just am never going to remember all of this. And it's really important for you to remember that you don't have to know all of that. It's not expected that you know all of that as a new player. You wouldn't compare a 5-year-old painter to an old master like Vincent van Gogh. So why should you, as a brand new rookie player, compare yourself to someone who's been playing the game for 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, even 30 years? All right. Those have been my top 5 tips for new D&D players. I hope this has helped you maybe feel a little bit more comfortable and confident when you sit down at the table to play your game. Farewell, and may your adventuring days be many more.